You may remember that Dungeon Quest used to be one of Roblox's most well-respected games around 2019 to 2022. Over the years, however, this game had gone from averaging over 15,000 concurrent players at all times, with a massive loyal community, to nowadays only averaging about 3,000 concurrent players despite Roblox becoming a lot more popular. Which might still seem like a lot, but it certainly has had a massive downfall with the amount of horrible updates and changes that have been done to the Dungeon Quest that everybody had once loved, completely ripping this game apart off of its classic and nostalgic emotions that this game had offered everybody years ago. But how exactly did this happen? Why did Dungeon Quest lose that much of its loyal player base in the first place? Well, in the first 2 years of this game's release, a lot of the Roblox community, including myself, had gotten extremely attached to Dungeon Quest, as for quite a lot of Roblox players back then, this had felt like the closest a Roblox game could get to being literally perfect. The entire concept of leveling up to unlock new gear and dungeons for you to complete was an entirely new experience for most players back then, and so with Dungeon Quest being quite simple to understand, and offering everybody an amazing and nostalgic gaming experience in our childhood, it's easy to understand why this had quickly risen to be one of Roblox's most well-respected games on the platform. However, with such a big and sudden player base, the game obviously had to keep updating frequently enough to not die, which at first it had successfully managed to do so, with the King's Castle dungeon releasing in April of 2019, and this had brought a lot of new content to the game, letting everybody get hours upon hours of enjoyment once again, as this update is what Dungeon Quest had also become like a magical wonderland for me. It was the one and only game I was always excited to play whenever I came back from school, so no wonder I still remembered the day Tanker had become the first person to ever get to level 100. Funnily enough, you can actually see my old username in his video. And precious times like this for all of the game's player base back then is what led up to this game continuously growing in popularity more and more. However, as time had kept passing with more and more dungeons added to the game over time, the concept of always repeating the same dungeons had slowly but surely become way too repetitive, which only led to more and more demand for different updates, as players had always gotten the best gear in the game less than 3 months after another dungeon had released. But this demand for updates was never truly met to the extent that most players wished for. And despite updates continuously slowing down, even though the community had continued to demand for more updates, it had caused a lot more excitement for updates whenever one did come out. But this excitement was never the same kind of long-lasting happiness that everybody had remembered from the beginning. Every single update was the exact same concept every single time. Die a few times trying to beat the dungeon, repeat until you are able to do it, keep repeating it until you have the best gear in the game, and that's it. So having this concept repeat itself continuously for 3 entire years, this not only led to YouTubers like Tankers stop making content about Dungeon Quest, but the game was practically bound to be cooked in the long term, along with each update making the game progressively longer and longer, which only further made it less beginner friendly, resulting in a huge decrease of new players that didn't just quit the game. And this was also extremely obvious to realize, since if you were a high level player with the best gear in the game, you would always have new players begging for you to carry them, so that they could further progress through the game, which had only further continued to prove how badly this game lacked an update that also made it more beginner friendly. And this demand had yet again never become a reality, as the game had remained in this state for a very long time between 2021 to 2023, continuously decreasing in popularity as more and more players had now thought the game was boring, which resulted in Dungeon Quest actually having an average concurrent player count of less than 2,000 players at some point. And even if new dungeons had been released, it would only spark up excitement for about 1 month at most for the game's community. So something clearly had to be done at this point, as the game was already pretty much dead. And surprisingly, something was actually done, and it wasn't looking any better for Dungeon Quest's history. Dungeon Quest was sold by VCafe to Vortex in June of 2023, leading to a majority of the game's community going absolutely nuts. As players were concerned it would become a pay-to-win gambling slot machine kind of a game, similar to Pet Simulator and all of those other games we all tend to see, that have the intention of leading players into spending as much money as possible. And sadly, to everyone's disappointment, the community ended up being mostly right about that. At first, nothing much was changed. I myself, along with most of the community, had been somewhat interested in how Dungeon Quest would now become, with new developers in place. Until the Yokai Peak dungeon had actually released in October of 2023, which was actually not bad at all, despite once again being the exact same concept as every other dungeon in the past. And just 2 weeks after the update had released, I already had traded up to the best gear and quit the game once again, so it's quite easy to tell why this game was practically bound to be cooked in the first place. Either way though, once things started to thoroughly go downhill, were after the Yokai Peak update had released. So what exactly happened in the span of one single year, that in my opinion has led to this game's downfall? Well, the entirety of the UI system was revamped into a confusing mess after remaining the same for 5 entire years. This was completely pointless, besides a few extra additions to the UI system that were actually useful, such as the potential checker. Boss raids had also been entirely revamped into giving you a few rounds per day, and upon killing the boss, it would always drop the best loot that you could possibly drop, even if you had played the lower level raids, and instantly one-shot the boss. And you could also purchase double the amount of boss raid rounds for Robux, meaning that this wasn't just an extra daily reward, but rather double the easy loot in just 5 minutes if you had the Robux for it. The Abyssal Void dungeon had also released as of 2 months ago, and fairly quickly after this update, Dungeon Quest had added a new platinum currency that you could now use for almost everything that used to be bought with Robux, such as cosmetics, which was absolutely tedious to legitimately gain higher amounts of this currency if you hadn't spent Robux in order to buy it, because obviously you're able to buy this with Robux. The gifting feature had been added as well, which lets you gift players anything that costs Robux. And this might not be so bad at first glance, but this included the platinum currency, meaning that you could gift players as much platinum as you wish, which you're about to see why this was a horrible idea in like a minute. Daily rewards had also been entirely revamped, now forcing the player to play the game for 1 entire hour every single day for them to claim a total of 15 daily items, unlike the previous 4 daily reward items that everybody had got, unless you skipped the timer or bought more daily rewards using the platinum currency, because obviously it has to be paid to win in a way. And one of the subjectively worst updates ever, the AFK mode portal had been added, which could get you as many as 40 loot drops overnight without a single bit of effort. And whilst those are by far the worst updates this game has ever seen, there are actually some new positive ones, such as the ability to favorite items so you don't accidentally sell them anymore. But those have no chance at topping the horrible ones, because the amount of loot that a player can now get for free every single day by doing practically nothing has increased from 4 loot drops a day before late 2024 to a whopping 100 loot drops per day if you were to use AFK mode the entire time, along with claiming your daily rewards and doing the daily boss raids. So I guess the game has literally become effortless, as now anybody can get the best gear in the game without even having to play the game. It's as if they got inspired by Souls RNG, because this is quite literally what I can imagine a Souls RNG and Dungeon Quest collab would look like. But hey, if that's not enough already, the entirety of the game's economy has gone in shambles. And this isn't only due to the amount of loot you can now get by doing literally nothing, but rather from the platinum currency that has also been added. Are you lazy to AFK for hours upon hours just to get the best gear in the game? Just find somebody trading the best gear in the game in return for you to gift them like 15,000 platinum currency, which is only 800 Robux, because that's somehow allowed and considered fair trading. Last time I checked, wasn't it not allowed to give somebody Robux in return for items because that's cross-trading? Oh wait, but just because it's an in-game currency that you're gifting somebody with Robux, it's now allowed. Now yes, it's true that I don't make the rules here, I'm no Roblox admin to be saying this, but this to me is quite literally cross-trading. And what makes this even funnier to me is that if you were to actually give somebody Robux instead of gifting them the platinum currency, that is actually bannable if you're caught, even though it's almost the same thing. However, there is actually one valuable item left in this game despite all of that actually is worth quite a lot. And that's obviously just because you cannot drop this item from daily rewards or by being in AFK mode. And this item is the ultimate rarity item dropped from the bonus boss of Abyssal Void with like a 1 in 4,000 chance, I believe. And due to this being the most valuable item in the game as of me uploading this video, people will be charging you like over 100,000 platinum for this, which would cost you like 4,500 Robux if you chose to pay to win. And if you don't, then well, I guess you can have your last little bit of fun that's left within Dungeon Quest by trading up to this item, or by grinding for it. Once again repeating the same process over and over again, even after 6 years ever since the game has released. After all though, Dungeon Quest isn't actually as bad as something like Pets Go, especially for new players nowadays, since it has been made much more beginner friendly overall, with how much easier it is to drop a lot of items now. But even leveling up from the start is an extremely boring process that overall relies on the same concept repeated over and over again, until you finally reach the Abyssal Void update. So despite Dungeon Quest losing almost all of its charm and nostalgia that it always had kept to itself in one way or another until now, it's definitely not as bad as many other Roblox games out there. Would I recommend this game nowadays though? Well, I don't really know about that. I would definitely personally always choose this game though over something like Source RNG. However, with that said, if you've enjoyed this video, I would heavily appreciate it if you could like and subscribe, no pressure though. And thank you to everybody who has recently donated or become a member on screen.